Before we get into today's story, make sure to hit that like button on this video so we can keep bringing you more. Subscribe if you haven't already, and drop a comment below to share your thoughts or your own experiences. Your support is what keeps these stories coming. A follower named Jason sent me this story. One night, I was at home relaxing in the living room. At the time, I lived in a small house with a roommate. We were both renting it, but that night my roommate wasn't home, so I was completely alone. Around 11 a.m., I started hearing a strange noise coming from the back of the house. I couldn't immediately tell what it was, and I also couldn't pinpoint exactly where it came from. The sound stopped after a short while, so I tried to ignore it. A few minutes later, I heard it again. It was so strange. I got up and walked toward the back area. It was extremely dark outside, and the windows were covered. I peeked outside into the backyard, but I didn't see anything. I couldn't tell if the sound was coming from outside or from down in the basement. I didn't want to go into the basement alone, but I felt like I had to check. I walked over and went down the stairs. The basement wasn't finished, and we never used it for anything. When I got down there, I didn't see anything, but the noise became much clearer. I followed the sound until I got close, then looked up. That's when I saw a man at the egress window, standing right on the other side of it. I jumped back in shock. I was not expecting that. He noticed me at the same time and immediately started climbing out of the window well into the backyard. For a moment, I had no idea what to do. Then I pulled out my phone and called the police. The man seemed to be gone, but when I looked at the window, it was damaged. The noises I had heard must have been him trying to pry it open and break inside. I went back upstairs and waited. When the police arrived, the man was long gone. I couldn't give a good description because I'd only seen him for a second. I honestly don't even remember what he looked like. The police told me there had been several break-ins in the area, but they didn't know who was responsible. After they left, I felt nervous that the man might return, but thankfully he never did. I stayed in that house for about another year, and this was by far the scariest thing that happened while I lived there. I don't know why he chose our house specifically. Maybe he just broke into random homes. I'm guessing he was the same person behind the other break-ins nearby. I also realized why I hadn't seen him when I first checked the backyard. The spot where he was hiding in the window well was just out of sight. I'm just glad that when he saw me in the basement, he decided to leave instead of trying to come inside. Thanks to Jason for sharing this story. A follower named Daniel sent me this story. During my second semester in college, I worked at the campus library. My job was simple. I sat behind the desk and checked out books for people. Many nights I worked alone since the library wasn't usually very busy. One evening, I was working until closing, and once again, I happened to be the only staff there. As it got later, the number of students dwindled. A few people were still scattered around studying, but they were far from my desk. Then I noticed a man walk in. He looked to be in his 40s. He passed me without saying anything and disappeared deeper into the library. Eventually, the other students left, and it was time to close. I suddenly remembered that I hadn't seen that man leave. I made an announcement that we were closed, then waited 10 minutes. As far as I could tell, he was the only person still inside besides me, but he didn't come out. I had a bad feeling, but I knew I'd have to go find him. I started walking through the aisles, checking row after row of bookshelves. That's when I heard footsteps. He was definitely still in there, but always a few aisles away. Every time I got closer, his footsteps moved farther off. It was almost like he was deliberately avoiding me. I called out that the library was closed and he needed to leave. He didn't respond. Whenever I entered the same aisle as him, he quickly slipped around a corner and to another one. He was purposefully running away from me, playing some sort of twisted game of cat and mouse. Frustrated and uneasy, I went back to my desk. I texted a couple of friends about what was happening. I debated calling campus security, but I didn't want to unless it was absolutely necessary. I told myself that if the man didn't leave in a few minutes, I would. Thankfully, not long after, the man suddenly appeared from round a corner. Without saying a word, he made a beeline for the exit and bolted outside. I was relieved. I quickly finished my closing tasks and locked up. I lived in the dorms on the other side of campus. By now, it was nighttime, dark and empty outside. As I began the walk back, I soon realized someone was following me. I turned to check, and to my shock, it was the same man from the library. I tried to walk faster, but his pace quickened too. Every time I glanced back, he was still there, getting closer. The sound of his footsteps behind me made my stomach drop. Finally, I decided not to risk it. I ran. I sprinted across campus as fast as I could, not looking back, not slowing down. My dorm building came into view, and I pushed myself harder until I reached it. I slipped inside, slammed the door shut, and ran upstairs to my room. Only then did I finally feel safe. I never saw that man again, not on or off campus. I still wonder who he was and what his intentions were. Why did he stay in the library so long, avoiding me, only to follow me afterward? I don't even want to think about what could have happened if I hadn't run straight to my dorm. I only worked at the library for that one semester, and looking back, I'm glad I stopped when I did. Thanks to Daniel for sharing this story. A follower named Marcus sent me this story. This story takes place back when I was 14 years old. I was a freshman in high school, and one evening my friend Dante came over. We always played video games together whenever we had the chance, usually down in my basement. My dad always called the TV in the living room his sports-watching TV. He even had a lazy boy chair in there. That was fine with me, though, because the TV in the basement was bigger. That night, we were home alone. My parents and older sister were all gone until much later. Dante and I were playing Madden when we suddenly heard a noise from upstairs. At first, I was confused because I knew nobody in my family was supposed to be home yet. I asked Dante if he heard it too, and he said yes. We did have a cat, but the sound was nothing like that. It sounded more like someone walking around. We heard it again. Both of us paused the game and got up at the same time. We decided to go to the spare bedroom in the basement. We ran over and locked ourselves inside. I felt a little safer knowing that the door had a lock, but I still had no idea what was happening. As we sat there in silence, we heard the sound of someone coming down the stairs. That's when panic set in. We stayed as quiet as possible, barely moving. Whoever it was began searching around the basement. When they didn't find anything in the main room, they started walking directly toward the room we were hiding in. My heart was pounding and I was holding my breath. Dante was too. Then about 10 seconds later, the person suddenly turned around and walked back toward the stairs. We listened as they went up them again. That's when we knew we had to call the police immediately. I didn't have a cell phone back then, but thankfully Dante did. He called 911 and told them we thought someone had broken into the house. They told us to stay put and said help was on the way. They stayed on the line the entire time. I could still faintly hear footsteps upstairs. Those few minutes waiting for the police felt like some of the longest of my life. When the officers arrived, they found a man upstairs. He was just some random guy inside our home. I remember him claiming that it was his friend's house, but when that was proven wrong, he quickly changed his story and said he must have had the wrong address. I didn't believe him for a second. The way he got in was through the back door, which my parents had forgotten to lock before they left. That was one of the craziest moments of my entire life. Thanks to Marcus for sharing this story. A follower named Sarah sent me this story. This happened when I was about 3 or 4 years old, nearly 30 years ago. My mother had taken me with her to pick up my oldest brother from school. We arrived early, so while my mom talked with her friends, I went off to play. There was a big hole in the chain link fence that a custodian had tried to mend with a long metal wire. It created a kind of perch, and I climbed onto it, pretending I was a bird in a pet shop while I waited. My back was to the schoolyard, and I was facing the sidewalk and street that ran along the south side of the school. I was lost in my little world when I suddenly heard a woman's voice calling out, "Hey there, sweetie." She must have been repeating it for some time before I noticed, because I'd been daydreaming. When I finally looked up, I saw a woman who had stepped out of a still-running car and was walking toward me. She looked older than my mom, who was in her early 30s then. I'd guess the woman was in her late 40s or early 50s. She looked like any tired, slightly disheveled mom picking up her child. I was an extremely shy little girl, so I never responded. She kept walking closer, saying, "Hey, sweetie, it's cold out, isn't it?" My heart started pounding, and a lump rose in my throat. I felt like I was going to cry. I was terrified of talking to strangers. Then she said, "It's so cold. Why don't you come wait in my car with me?" I glanced past her to her car, a gray station wagon, dirtier than my uncle's, but otherwise similar. The back seat was covered in toys, which made me think she must have been a mom. Soon she was right in front of me, her hand extended, waiting for me to come with her. Something inside me screamed that this wasn't right. Even though she looked like just another mother, I knew I couldn't go with her. But before I could even answer, she suddenly spun around, sprinted back to her car, jumped in, and sped away at what had to be 60 miles per hour. As the rush of fear faded, I realized I could hear my mother shouting behind me. My brother ran over, grabbed me firmly by the hand, and pulled me away. I was crying, confused, and had no idea what was happening. Later that night, my father had a very serious talk with me and my middle brother about stranger danger. I told them about the toys in the woman's car, and my brother asked, "Dad, wouldn't it be okay if we went because she had toys?" My dad looked at us and said, "Then we wouldn't have you anymore." That hit hard. Only then did I realize how serious the situation had been. Years later, my mom told me her side of the story. She said something deep in her instincts suddenly told her to check on me. That's when she saw the strange woman approaching. She knew immediately something was wrong and told my brother to run over because he could reach me faster. She also managed to memorize the woman's license plate as she drove away, and even saw her car circling the school on a few other occasions. My mom reported everything to the police about the suspicious woman, but there was never any follow-up. Thanks for sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give the video a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a terrifying tale. See you in the next one.